praise. Amen? Amen. It's a wonderful day to be here in worship and with you all. Most of you are aware that today is the beginning of Women's History Month. Amen? Amen. As for the remainder of the Sundays, I would actually like for us to focus in prayer on issues that are concerning women, women history, women rights, freedom, and all of that. As we think about that as a focus, there are a number of things that if you need a list, I can give you one. And I'm sure several others can give some as well. But if you want some advice on some things to pray about as we think about Women's History Month, for those of you who are either praying at home or praying here, I can give you some, and then I'll talk to a couple other people as well. Amen? All right. I thought we'd start this month's sermon off of someone who is famous in the Bible. Amen? And one of those people is certainly Ruth. And so I want to read a little bit from the book of Ruth, chapter 1, beginning at verse 11. Ruth chapter 1, beginning at verse 11. Reads as follows. But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who would become your husband? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me." At this they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" This is really a very, very powerful book. And even that it is in the Bible, there's a powerful ideal, if you will. How many of you know that the Bible is really a construction of biblical history, primarily dealing with one group of people, namely the Jews or Hebrews? Y'all know that? How many of you also are aware that Ruth was not a Jew or Hebrew by birth? But not only is her story in the Bible, but she has a book dedicated to her story. Ruth was the non-Jew and Naomi was the Jew, but the book is called Ruth. So you know something significant happened here, right? You know something powerful had to occur for her to have a book named after her, for her to have a history set aside dealing with her and her own story. What I want to say about that is your biology does not determine who you are. And I'm using biology kind of loosely. So I'm talking about your family origin, I'm talking about your culture, and I'm also talking about your history. Many of us, and I see people all over the world, who just become whatever their family and culture said that they would be.
Well,
You're aware of that, right?
Amen.
I see people all the time. They grew up to be the same kind of people that their mothers and fathers were, right?
Amen.
Whatever the sins of the mothers and fathers were, they repeat them. They don't change them. And one of the reasons for that is that they believe that they have to be whatever their history says that they are.
Amen.
Whatever your DNA says about you, people believe that that defines your destiny.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so if you look at most children, you can look at and identify their family by what you see from them.
Amen.
You know, daughters, you can tell what mothers are like. Be careful. Sons, you can trace and identify what fathers were like. Oh, they may have different trades, but most of the time it's going to fit in the same or similar niche. Right? Think about the same kind of money, live about the same kind of house,
Yeah.
have the same kind of issues.
Amen.
Y'all think I'm wrong to follow somebody? I've known people throughout the places where I've lived, and if a daughter had a problem with husbands,
Yes.
you probably understand that the mother also had one.
That's right.
If a son had a problem with wives,
Right.
amen, you probably just might trace it and say the father. It may not look the same, but we stem from what we're around unless we decide that our biology is not going to be our predictor, but we're actually going to look for something else. Look for different opportunities. Look for interruptions in who we've been and become truly something different, what God intended for us to be.
Amen.
So excuse me for not doing my complete homework. My incomplete part of the homework is I didn't go back to determine specifically what the definition of Naomi, what Naomi meant. All right, so somebody might remember what it is. You remember what it is? Naomi. Bitter. It doesn't mean bitter. That's what she redefined herself as. Okay. I'll look it up and I'll give it to you next week. Elimelech, I know what Elimelech means because it's really, the name itself tells you what it means. Eli, you know what Eli, anybody know what Eli means? It's actually the shortened version of God. So Eli is the shorter version of a name for God. And Melech means king. The name means God is king.
Amen. Okay.
So why do I bring up Elimelech? Well, this is a part of Ruth's history. It actually starts with that verse. When they were leaving their own home and going to find provisions for themselves because there was a drought in Israel, they then traveled to the land of Moab. Y'all know how crazy that sounds to travel to the land of Moab? Moab was one of the arch enemies of the Hebrew people. But because that's where they saw provisions, they traveled there looking for resources, looking for a way to live, a way to survive. They didn't trust where they were. So Elimelech took his family, saying God is king, to another land. There's another part that I want you to know about Ruth's history. Naomi had lost her hope, and she was experiencing both loss and hope. Her husbands and son died. She brought them with her. She came with them to the land of Moab. And then they died, leaving her no heir. Which was what I need you to understand. That there was time for the sons to actually provide an heir through marriage for their mother. They were married for about 10 years, but they left no one for Naomi to depend on. Her daughters-in-laws were legally bound to her. Here's what that meant and what culture said that there was about. If you married into a family, you became a part of that family. And so if your husband or wife died, leaving no heirs, you then had an obligation to marry somebody else and produce an heir for that family line. So they did not belong to you. They belonged to the family line. So they were bound to her to provide provision for Naomi and the family line. Right? While she was there, while Naomi was there, while she had experienced all of that loss, while she was bound to her daughters-in-laws, and her daughters-in-laws were legally bound to her, while she was experiencing that loss and hope, she heard in Moab, in the land of trouble, where she was experiencing more hardship, that the Lord had come to provide for the Hebrews again. Isn't it good when you're in the middle of a lot of trouble, a lot of drought, you're not experiencing anything good? Isn't it good to hear that God might be showing up in your life? I'm just asking, you know. When everything you do seems to fall apart, right? When everywhere you go seems to find you more and more trouble, it's good to look up one day and see, well, God may be opening a new page for me.
Yes, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just good. I mean, maybe y'all ain't never been over there. Maybe you haven't ever experienced any hardships. Maybe you haven't come to a time where you tried thing after thing after thing after thing, and nothing seems to be working for you. Everybody else might say you're doing good, but you're depressed. You're not experiencing the hope that God wants to provide. It's good to look up and see that God is turning the page.
Amen.
That's really what Naomi was. She saw that God was turning the page, but sometimes when we see God is turning the page, we don't trust it all the way.
That's right. That's right.
And so we don't want to catch anybody else up in our journey just in case it does not work out. Well, some of us don't want to catch anybody else in our journey. There's some of us who want to drag other people along with us.
That's right.
I hope that's not you this morning. We going down, or we might go down, and if I go down, I don't want to go by myself. But there are actually some people who are bound up with God and the hope that it is God, and you want to give everybody around you an opportunity for life and life to the full. And so, instead of you dragging others down with you, you release them to find the life that God has provided for them as well. It's really what Naomi was trying to do with her daughters-in-law. They felt a real responsibility to go with her, and it took pleading and pleading and pleading for one of them to say that she'd go back to her family. She'd give herself a real opportunity for life. Because really, looking at Naomi's situation, there was no hope for either one of them.
Right.
Naomi was already an older woman when she came to Moab, and then her husband had died, and her sons had been married for 10 years, and then more time had passed. So I'm guessing that the women had to be at least around late 20s or 30s. That's my guess. You gonna wait for a child to be born? Maybe. Well, I guess you gotta have somebody to provide the child first, and you can. What does that look like to everyone? It looks like a dead-end journey. So then why is it that Ruth saw something else? In spite of Naomi's emptiness, in spite of her loss, in spite of her hope, in spite of the freedom that Naomi wanted to provide for them, Ruth saw something else. And why did she see it? She had a determination. There are a lot of people in the world. Deidre's been talking to people, I've been talking to people, you've been talking to people, you've been looking at people. There are a lot of people in the world who blame everything on everybody else. Don't know? It's somebody else's choice, not their own choices, while they're in the rut they're in today. Somebody else's fault that they are in the career that they're in today. Somebody else's fault that things not going right on their job, in your family, in the neighborhood, in whatever. It's always somebody else's fault. If X, Y, Z wouldn't have done Z, P, S, I'd be all right today.
Yeah. That's true.
Ruth actually made a determination for what her life was going to be like, and she did not care what her past said. What she cared about was a new inspiration that was at work in her life.
Yes, yes, yes.
She saw something different than just marriage, than just an obligation. She saw her own book page open to a new venue that was not described by what her circumstances said.
Amen. Amen.
You know what predictable outcomes are? People look at your life and look at what you've been. They look at what your skill set is, and then they predict based on who you are, where you've been, what's going to become of you.
Amen.
Ruth threw out the predictable outcome.
Yes.
But here's the mistake that a lot of us make. We turn to the end of the book and we say, oh, that's why she did it. Because she knew God told her that he was going to provide her husband, going to provide her wealth. Here's what I need you to understand about Ruth. Ruth did not see her latter days. What she saw is what God was at work doing in her from that moment and previously, from the time that she accepted herself as connected, grounded in Naomi's pathway.
Amen. Amen.
Sometimes we see the other people's lives and we say, oh, that's why they made the choices that they did.
Yes.
Before you get to the end of your life, you need to decide who you are now,
Amen.
in this moment.
Yes, right.
You may need to make a determination about who you are going to be identified as right now. Take a couple of seconds, think about what your history says about you. A little. Take a couple of seconds. Think, what does your history identify you as? Some of us, we're winners because our families have been winners. They made a lot of money. People look up to them. They're respect them, all that other kind of stuff. Other of us, we might be losers. We've been losing all of our life. We've been dependent. We've never made any decisions on ours. Some of us been somewhere in the middle. Some of us say we can't make a decision. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we could be based on what our history says. Based on our history. What does your history say about you? What does right now say about you? Maybe you're at a crossroad in your life. Right? And at the particular crossroads you are, you can either go one way and it will mean a completely new kind of life for you if you take that direction. Or maybe you can just stay on the road that you're on and keep giving in to those predictable outcomes. Somewhere in Ruth's life, on her journey, she hit a crossroad.
Yes, yes.
And at the crossroad, she could have remained a Moabitess.
Yes.
She could have remained predictable. Or she could have chosen a new path for herself.
Amen.
How many of you know that new paths are not easy?
Amen.
New paths are not easy at all. It's easy to keep doing what you've been doing.
That's right.
You don't even have to think about that. Whenever I'm coming to church from my house, or even if I'm going somewhere else, I know I don't even have to turn my brain on. Right? Sometimes I look up and at a certain time I'm headed here in this direction. Sometimes I look up, I'm supposed to be going somewhere else, but my brain will tell me, keep going down your normal path. Y'all ever done that? You traveling at your normal time, on your normal pathway, but you actually have something else in your calendar at that particular time.
Yes.
And you look up, and you go on your usual route. It takes energy. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes retraining and reskilling yourself to go a new way.
Yes.
To be somebody different than what you know you were. Ruth took some time to learn what it meant to be a Hebrew. She took some time to learn what it meant to be connected and grounded in Naomi. She took some time to understand who Naomi's God was and stop saying that that's Naomi's God, but that's my God.
Amen. Amen.
She took some time to give herself a new set of skills and to disconnect from what she knew in order to follow the new world that God had opened.
Yes, yes.
Brother, so you know why this story is in the Bible? Because Ruth's story is not easy. No. Probably some of the most difficult work that anyone would ever do in their life is to change the direction, to transform their identity, and then stick to the plan. I know that I've run across a whole bunch of people who got a lot of plans. right? Let me search and make sure this person is not here. I don't want to talk about it. I'm not going to call their names. I was talking to somebody recently who told me about somebody who had a plan. They was going to follow this person's plan. And this person was going to mentor them in what they had planned to do. So I asked, I thought a simple question. I said, have they ever done it before? I think that's a simple question. Y'all think that's a simple question? And great plan. Look, sounded good about all that. And I just asked, have they ever done what they talked about doing before? And the answer was no. You know what my next question was? How is somebody who's never done the job going to mentor you in doing the job? Before I became a pastor, I had all kind of ideas about what it meant to be a pastor. I did. I thought I could do it better than anybody else had done it in the world. I thought that I was a genius, and then I started doing it. I said, oh, this is not as easy as it looked like it is. Amen. And sometimes the book itself doesn't help me understand this particular situation. Sometimes I got to be in it before the light bulb comes on, and I know how to maneuver in and out of that. Now, I used to think you had to be nice to everybody. You know, nice. How many of y'all from Minnesota? Got a couple from Minnesota. So Minnesota nice has a particular definition, right? Y'all know, if you Minnesotans, you understand this, right? I thought you had to be Minnesota nice to do this job. And then I got in a few situations and it actually popped a new light bulb on in my head about some of the things that Jesus was actually involved and wrapped up in. And I said, oh, Minnesota nice don't get this job done.
Amen.
Amen. In fact, in the doing of the job, occasionally people are going to be mad at you. Hello? Here's the real clincher. You can't be mad back at them. Because if you exemplify the habits and behaviors of the people that you're trying to teach, then you're not teaching. Now, apply the same thing to your job, what you thought about your job before you got into it. A lot of people go to school, they do a lot of things, and before they get to the job, I am going to be the best. I'm not going to have this kind of problem anymore because I am going to be a different kind of whatever you are. Most of the time when you show up, I mean, if you pay attention, you actually can learn from the people who are there and actually do a better job. But on day one, you actually don't come in as the transformer that you visualize yourself as. You know why? You've never been in the situation. You don't understand how this thing that they never talked about in the book actually shows up where you are. Nobody teaches you how to turn your attitude off and employ your skills when your attitude wants to rule the day. You actually have to. Naomi and Ruth were bound and connected, and Ruth understood through life experience what it took to keep the commitment that she made. That's really what it means to choose a new path. That's really what it means to stay on the path once you choose it. Here's what she said. I wonder if you can say that about the path you have chosen. Ruth said, I don't care what you're saying to me, how you want to release me, how much you think about me. I actually see something in me that you don't. And because I made a decision, where you go, Naomi, I'm going.
Amen.
Where you stay, Naomi, I will stay. The people that you are defining as your people, they're my people. The people that you're defining as the God that you're defining rather as your God, is my God. And most of us actually stop there. But hear the rest of her story. She said, where you die, that's where I'm going to be buried. Some people stop right there. No, we can't talk about me dying, me giving up my life. When it comes to that point, we have to. She was so committed to what she was doing. She had found something worthy to die for. Did you notice that she didn't have any gifts? There were no loopholes. There were no loopholes in how she described how she was bound up together with them. She didn't say, I'm going to give you 5 years, and after 5 years, then I got to go. She said, wherever, whenever, however, from this point on, my life, my destiny is bound up and found in you, the values you hold, and I am committed not just today, not just when it's comfortable, but I'm committed until I die.
Amen. Amen.
Have you made that kind of determination for yourself? Are you so committed to what you've seen as a true value in the core of who you are that you're willing to hold on to it no matter what? Marriage ceremonies most of the time have such commitments, but I look around today and not a lot of people keep. I mean, the commitments. I mean, some people stay married. That's not what I'm talking about. Some stay married. But keep the commitment. Guide and direct your life by what your promises say, by identifying yourself as so knit and bound with the other person that your heart beats with their heart. When they hurt, you hurt. Other side is also true, my brothers and sisters. When they experience joy and excitement, you share that same kind of joy with them. Do you really have a somewhere in your life where you go, I go? Where you stay, I'll stay. Your people, my people. Your God, my God. Where you die, there I too will be there. You have one of those in your life? No. King said, if you haven't found a reason to die, you don't have a reason to live.
Well,
if you haven't found something worthy to submit your life to, surrender your life in the service of, you don't really have a passion that guides and directs your journey.
yeah.
The crass way to pull it is you're valueless. The Bible talks about people who change with the blowing of.
Yeah.
You see people like that? One day God is everything. The Bible is all in all.
Come on now.
The next day, for some of us, the next few minutes, the Bible is irrelevant. It has no meaning. One day, a particular kind of people, a particular group, a particular culture is the defining points of your life. The next day, the workers, blowing of the wind. One day, you're passionate about being a teacher. Next day, you want to be a construction worker. There's nothing guiding your life. There's nothing that sets the course for the direction that you're going to travel in. Ruth made a determination. You know who you can blame for the fact that you don't have a direction? I mean, you try to blame a lot of people. Some people blame me. I don't preach good enough. That church is horrible. They don't love me enough. So you blame it. You know what? I can take you blaming. You know why I can take you blaming? Y'all really want to know why I can take you blaming? Because you're blaming me as a lie from the pit of hell. Now I know it. I can actually know that. I'm not confused about that. You want to know who you blame? For your life being in shambles, having no direction, you struggle over and over with the problems you have. You know who you can blame? Next time you get up and you look in the mirror, you point every last one, no, just point all of your fingers in that direction.
Amen. Amen.
Ruth could have said to Naomi, it's your fault that I'm going back home. She could have said that. Because Naomi was so definite about releasing her. Ruth made up in her own mind who she was, and it did not matter what anyone else said other than God who defined her.
Amen.
She saw hope in who she had become. You know what's better? She saw life in who she had become. Did her circumstances look any different? I mean, just read the story. Did her circumstances look any different? No. They hadn't even gotten back to what Naomi had heard about, that there was something different going on in the Hebrew. They hadn't even gotten back. They were on the way. It probably was actually more desolate at that point than it was when they left. Because there were at least people where she left. Nothing looked different about the circumstances, but what was going on inside of Ruth.
Yes.
That's what looked different. What was happening, the life that was going on in her, that's what looked different to Ruth. Decide who you are, my brothers and sisters. There are too many of us who let history define us. There are too many who let others define them. What allows us to let others define us is our own weakness.
Yes.
That we refuse to be responsible for ourselves, for hearing God, for understanding who we are and who we're intended to be. There are too many of us who enjoy victimization. There are too many of us who are locked into predictable outcomes. What I want you to know about Ruth is she epitomizes strength. The older I get, I understand a rare kind of strength. I think every year it gets rarer in terms of what I see. Ruth was able to do something that all of us should be able to do, and that is connect with her spiritual DNA. Y'all have heard me describe what I mean by DNA. I'm going to say it again because you might not remember, even though I've said it a couple times. What I mean by DNA is your divine nature and anointing. Everybody actually has a unique one. Something that is at work in you that is from God, that defines who you are, what you're particularly gifted to do, and who you're gifted to be. That is not about your history, but is about His story for your life.
Amen.
Amen? She connected with it. But you got to do a little bit more than connect with it. She also nurtured and trusted discernible outcomes. You know how outcomes are discernible? I didn't say predictable, I said discernible. You know how outcomes are discernible? You discern your outcomes because you listen to what God says about you and not what everything and everybody else says about you. You actually pay attention to who and what God says you are going to be and what you're going to become, irrespective of what your circumstances and your history says about you. But it doesn't happen automatically. You have to nurture it and you have to trust it regardless of what these eyes see. You have to be able to see with a different set of eyes. Many of us rush to Ruth's great end. But she decided long before she was on the path to her end who she was. Life, she said, is who I am. Know who God says you are. Agree with what God says about you. And then align your life to what God has told you. It takes work.
Yes, it does.
It takes a lot to truly line your life up, to nurture your path, so that you can actually be and enjoy the person that you are. Because the truth is, brothers and sisters, everybody else want to run. I want to run your life. I got a whole list of stuff that I want y'all to do. Amen. Person sitting next to you, they want to run your life. Right? They do. If they can get you to do anything that they wanted you to do, trust me. Trust me. They'll do it. You know what keeps you straight? You got to know who you are. You have to know who you are intended to be and what you're intended to do. That's the people who want me to be a mechanic and work on their car. I know they should. They might not. I know I'm not a mechanic. Hello, somebody. Amen. Some of us want me to have big muscles. That's what Black Rennie. He knew I was going to call his name. But I don't have the discipline to take the time that he takes in the gym, and so I can't. People will run your life if you let them. I know I'm going to get in trouble for this one, but I like to get in trouble. Your mama will run your life. I even heard some mama say amen to that. So go all the way down the list. I ain't picking on mom. Daddy, husbands, wife, sons, daughters, siblings. I'm going down the list. People that you love dearly. Many of them have decided who you need to be. Come on, tell the truth. What keeps you stable, what keeps you focused, is not them. One of my biggest heartaches, brothers and sisters, is when people come to me, and in their story, and in their life, in their language, they're begging for others to release them. Most of the time, they won't. It's up to you to release yourself from the prison and the captivity that others want to put you in. That's what made Ruth say what she said. I'm sure everybody around her was telling her, you crazy if you go with her after she's released you. She saw something different that was life. I don't want you to miss the connection. She saw something different that was life. That was not about her circumstances. It was about something had connected in her spirit, in whom she was intended to be, and she decided she was going to trust it and nurture it and align her life to it. It's not easy, brothers and sisters, but it is doable. Really want to know what's really going to give you satisfaction and hope and joy? It's that. You make all the money in the world. If you're doing something you weren't intended to be, I will guarantee you might smile to everybody else, But you're going to be in pain when nobody's looking. This life is not about how much money you make. It's not even about how much power you have. It's not about the influence that you have on anyone else. You know what it's about? Finding the thing that restores and replenishes your soul and gives you joy and makes you know that you're worth something. Make all the money you want to make. If you don't have that, you can fool everybody else. You will be miserable. Ruth found what was life, what refreshed her, what restored her every day just through the process of doing it over and over and over again. It gave her meaning. It satisfied the heart of her meaning, her desire. Ruth found it. She nurtured that. She trusted it. She aligned her life to it. It's a powerful story. You should read it. You should trust that it has direction for you and where you were intended and designed to go. And that it does mean life and hope and freedom for you. Nobody else gonna line your life up for you. And now, this is a bonus though. If you do it right, those who watch you, they'll find some freedom too. Those you care about will see that it's possible to break out of the prisons that others want to put them in. Those who are trying to hold on to some hope, they'll see that the hope is real. Trust who God says you are. I believe this. I don't know if I can find it in Scripture anywhere, but I believe it. If you trust who God says you are, money will come. Resources, they'll come. You already have the most important thing, life. It's a powerful story. She's a bright, shining example to us all. She's a window in the true purpose of living a life worth it. Amen.
To you, you reign on the throne, for you are God and God alone. Because of you, my cloudy days are long. I can sing